Welcome back to the Daily Dope Show. This is Brando, your faithful weed commando and the anti-drug warrior, because the drug war is just bullshit. It's just an affront to authoritarian fascism. I mean, come on, man. Really, what is the drug war? They're telling you that there's certain substances that you can't put in your body because they don't approve of it. Because it's dangerous? Really? Come to find out, the ones that they approve are more dangerous and more addictive, can kill way more people, like alcohol. Like we got the whole fucking world like flipping out about this opioid overdose epidemic, which is based on the fentanyl problem, being like that fentanyl is everywhere. And yet, for some reason, you know, nobody talks about the fact that the alcohol deaths a year went from 80,000 to 100,000. The tobacco deaths went from 400,000 a year to over 500,000. You know, no one cares about that shit. No one talks about that. You know, you got these Alex Berenson people out there talking about how, you know, if you smoke marijuana, you know, well, of course, it could cause schizophrenia. And people that kill each other and kill other people and blow shit up, man, they all smoked weed when they were doing it, according to him. But he ain't going to talk about all the fact that Consumer Reports just put out an article talking about how, you know, there's arsenic and heavy metals all up in your juice that you drink every morning, no matter what brand or whatever. How long's that been going on? And what kind of what's the side effects of heavy metal poisoning and arsenic build up in the body? You want to look it up? Look it up, Alex Berenson, you genius, whose wife I should thank for really making you an ass, going out in public talking about how marijuana causes people to go crazy. You're the one that's crazy, dude, because the poison in your juice is more dangerous than weed. So now I'm coming back on something else that I'm really pissed off about, and not because of the state of emergency or the government shutdown. Now, if this state of emergency included martial law and there was cops standing at the corner looking like military, you know, that kind of shit, I'd be kind of mad. And if you guys understand that Trump is out there trying to build the military up on our southern border for the military-industrial complex so that they can spend billions of dollars, not in Afghanistan where they have to fly over there and hang out in the desert, not in Iraq. These guys want to have that money down in our own desert. They want to chill out on the border and spend your tax money on toys so they can blow up brown people at our own border. That's what the fuck this wall's about. And Trump, you know, the first sign that you should be a little bit suspicious of this shit is that Trump is pushing it for all the wrong reasons. All right? Now, you might be one of these hater, redneck people that just hate Mexicans. And there's a lot of them. I live right in a town where there's a fuckload of them. And it's pretty sad, really. You might be one of those people. And you might think, well, you know, a wall is cool because it just shows everybody that we're badasses and we don't like foreign invaders. Well, let me tell you something. If you look at the Constitution and what the military is supposed to protect us against, it says something about domestic people that are, you know, ruining our liberties. Those are people that are equally should be as targeted as a threat to our values and democracy and whatever else you want at liberties. They are the threat, just as bad as standing armies are a threat from other countries. And it wasn't just one person that said that. It was many that repeated it. That people within our own country, bankers, corporations, they are the ones that are more of a threat to your freedom than any standing army could ever be. All right? So just remember that when you talk about wanting to build walls. Because walls are meant to keep people in. Walls are meant to do things that doesn't equal freedom, ever. Now, this whole excuse that Trump has about using the fucking wall to keep the drugs out is something that I've long been wanting to make a video about. And here we are. And it didn't take someone to write a story about it for me to know all the facts. I don't have to read this text that I highlighted here, but I'm gonna, because they make some good points and it's stuff I'm gonna talk about. So we're gonna get right into it. But before we do, let's just take a look at, you know, because when I read a bunch of numbers to you, you like dipshit people that just hate Mexicans and don't give a fuck about the drug issue or not, you're going to be like, you're not really going to get a clear picture in your little lizard brain because it's activated by hate and fear-mongering and propaganda. So you're not going to really understand what the fuck is really involved with the amount of people that cross this border on a daily basis, legally, through ports of entry. Because you just don't, you have no fucking idea what this line of car, what this feels like to sit in this. And I've been in this line. I've been in this line 2 times in my life to try to get to Mexico and to try to come back. So that's 4 times total. Let me tell you, this shit is not a picnic. Usually the temperature is way unbearable. Nobody wants to be in these lines. Nobody wants to deal with this bullshit. But furthermore, people that have dealt with this bullshit don't want to hear your fucking rhetoric about how drugs are coming into the fucking America via these little tiny leaks in the border that don't have fences and they're on private property that are way too deserty and dicky for anybody to even want to try to cross in the first place. You have to be a complete fucking idiot to think that there's some kind of a place on the border between America and Mexico where there isn't some kind of fucking safeguard against people coming across. Be it a fence, a bunch of customs agents driving around in circles, walls, actual walls that are already there, and other things all along the border. And no matter how you try to secure that more, drug cartels are going to spend more money than you spent just to make a tunnel going under it or fly around it or whatever they got to do. They don't care on that end of it. But on the real tip, you got to put yourself in the shoes of somebody that's sitting back there that calls themselves a drug kingpin. Do you think that a drug kingpin wants a bunch of, you know, dusty, desert traveled Mexican dudes that just are looking for freedom, so they'll do anything to get it, and strap a bunch of weed packages of, you know, weed and cocaine and heroin to their body with duct tape and run across some crazy place in the middle of the desert where there's no protection, no fence, no border patrol agents riding around, but it's somebody's backyard, I guarantee you that. You know, there's a lot of places like that along this border. But if you think that somebody down here, some drug kingpin, is going to trust somebody like that with their assets, with thousands and thousands of dollars, $100,000 or more worth of heroin or cocaine, if you think they're going to trust that as the means of getting their drugs to the other side, you are absolutely the most ridiculously stupid idiot on the face of the earth. This is where the drugs get in, right here, every day. Right here, right there, right there, in one of those cars. And these are just cars. You see these cars? This is just cars. I don't know why this particular, you know, the propaganda don't want you to see all the semis that go through there. Well, let me tell you, that's not a picnic either. There's literally, we're going to get into the numbers in a minute, guys. We really are. But what you got to understand is this border right here. If you think there's any way that any inch of this border isn't highly monitored by drones surveillance cameras, mini police stations positioned all along it, wherever there's not private property. And then where there's private property, it's Uncle, you know, Jeb and his cousins with their AR-15s and their, you know, Minutemen outfits and gear. There's really nowhere where there's a legitimate, like, oh, look, there's a big hole right here where people could just go through. And where there is places like that, it's called the Rio Grande River. If we can get a better map. I don't know, but you probably heard of it. It's a big river, you know, and there's areas in that river where the border actually goes right through the river, and there's really no way to build a fucking wall through that. And if you did, you'd be an asshole, because that's like wildlife preserves and shit all throughout that, in every state that's on that border, you know. You have Arizona, New Mexico, and Texas, a little bit of California. Look, guys, you people that are still sitting out there thinking that this wall is a good idea, I don't know how to break this to you softly, but it's a fucking, it's not, it's a bait and switch, first of all. That's not the fucking wall's even about. It ain't nothing to do with what Trump's talking about. Migrants come through across the border every day legally. They don't live here. They just have worker permits. And the ones that don't, you must think that they, you know, aren't really struggling to actually do good things in life, to believe that somebody's going to risk everything they got just to get across the border. But when it comes to drugs, there is absolutely no room for this kind of rhetoric that Trump is putting out. There's no possible, if you know what I know about heroin especially and other drugs, and you know about the CIA's involvement in Iran-Contra, and you know about the fact that heroin production in Afghanistan went from less than 50% of the world's pie chart to well over 90% of the world's pie chart within the first 12 months that we were on the ground there. We basically took over lands that weren't even meant to be poppy fields or whatever, that weren't producing before, and turned them into it. The amount of hectares in Afghanistan that is growing heroin crops is now over, I believe it's over 50 times more than when we landed in Afghanistan in 2002. Are you guys taking notes? Do you think all that, do you think that they have some kind of a reason why they would have to go through Mexico to get the Afghanistani heroin into America? Because I don't understand that logic in that thinking. Now, people might argue that, oh, the Mexican cartels, you know, they're stepping up their heroin game and blah, blah, blah. No, we can look at pie charts. They still don't have enough of a percentage of that to really say that, you know, people in the middle of Iowa in some rural area don't have to worry about fucking jonesing, because there's always heroin available when they're fucking ready for another hit. You know what I'm hinting at here, guys? The fucking drugs are being brought into this country by the government. It's been that way for a long time. Not all of them, not all the drugs, obviously. But the drugs that aren't being brought in by the government, that are being brought in through this method, which is big banker approved. All the world banks do money laundering for the Mexican drug cartels. So this is something that is done under the purview of, you know, all the people that want to keep marijuana illegal, incidentally. The big banks. They launder money for the drug cartels. And all them drugs, they come in through here. They come in through here, they come in through here. Here, this is all the same place with different angles. This is the border they come in, right here. You know, they come in through the place where you have to come in. Obviously, that's not really a thing. But anyway, yeah. See this? That might not be it. See that? $1.5 million worth of painkillers found hidden in a car. See, the thing about the border is that while this guy over here is getting searched, 10 guys over here aren't. And this guy might have drugs on him, or he might not. They might spend a lot of time searching a lot of people that don't have drugs, and every time they do, people are getting in with drugs. This is the kind of wall that we've seen before. It's more like a fence. It's whatever. And Trump is thinking that this is going to stop drugs and human trafficking and all this other stuff. Illegal migration, whatever that is. You know, it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of. Now, in case you're sitting here and you're yelling at your computer and throwing shit and saying, Brando, you're an idiot for thinking that drugs don't come in through the border and just leak on in, you know, on those places that these places like this and this, you know, we've all seen the movies, the westerns where the Mexican border is across some vast plain or desert. That's how it is everywhere along the border. There is no like, oh, yeah, there's this place just right outside of town where nobody's looking and nobody lives there and there's no fences, so you can just kind of sneak in. There's nothing like that. Every inch of this border is backed up by, you know, millions of feet of desert on everywhere you look, you know. This is all desert right here. All along this border. It's a nice, you know, and where it isn't desert, it's super ridiculously guarded, protected, and private property is the other option. There's nothing else, man. There's nothing else. You guys that are afraid of the border being too open, you're just irrational people that don't use critical thinking. And if you're worried about a border, what about the Canadian border, dude? There's so many places where there's no fences or people give a fuck about someone coming across. Here's just one article, but if you look into this, there's literally 1,000 articles that will talk about the same shit. I don't watch TV, but I'm guessing mainstream media is pounding this point too. Because why wouldn't they? Why would you not already know this? The thing about me is sometimes I don't understand how stupid people really are until I fucking see them repeating these talking points. And the fact that Trump is rolling this out as some kind of a talking point is kind of a little bit, it's a fucking red flag, man. It should make you sit there and scratch your head if you're a Trump supporter and be like, why is this guy pushing this obviously ridiculous talking point that couldn't possibly be any further from what really happens? I'm going to go ahead and read this shit now. In justifying his border wall, President Donald Trump frequently points to the amount of drugs entering the country through the southern border. But government statistics show that vast majority of hard drugs seized on the border come through the official ports of entry and not between them, where a wall would be built. And by the way, there's already fucking walls and fences and all that shit. And if you're a Democrat that thinks, oh, if we would have voted for Hillary, none of this would have ever happened. I can show you video clips of Hillary talking about building fences and border things and barriers is what she called it. She's just as much for everything going on with immigration as Trump is. Believe me. So anyway, back to the article. Government officials, border experts, and cartel leaders themselves had said the reason smugglers prefer the official entry is simple. They have a better chance of getting their product into the U.S. under the nose of CBP officers than they do on the backs of people crossing the river illegally and trying to evade Border Patrol. Of course. Not to mention, man, those people that do that shit, coyotes and those kind of drug runners that go over they charge more, from what I understand. Over the last 5 years, 86% of heroin, cocaine, methamphetamine, and fentanyl seized at the border was caught at designated ports of entry, while the rest seized by Border Patrol agents operating along the border between official crossings or at domestic checkpoints, according to CBP data. So among common drugs, only marijuana is seized more often from illegal border crossers than at ports. And I'll tell you why. Because people smoke weed. All right? Nobody that's running around in the middle of the desert trying to get across some place where there might be a hole in the fence and there's a, you know, a tunnel that you can go in, a cave to hide in, or, you know, that weird desert shit. Nobody's doing that with pounds of weed strapped on their back. You know, you need room for water and extra clothes and whatever the fuck, medical supplies. Like, that desert crossing is not anything that the average person could endure. So I highly doubt that anybody really cares about carrying bricks of weed through that kind of condition. So the reason that marijuana is seized among those runners that we just talked about that don't go, you know, that aren't driving nice cars through the border entry with good credentials and a good reason to get to the other side, the people that we're talking about are not, they're not chancing it, but they smoke weed. And weed is something that, you know, you want to have a nice, if you're going to make a trek through the desert, I'd want at least an ounce on me so I wouldn't run out, you know, maybe help some other people along the way. Anyway, back to the article. Quote, "We probably seize maybe 10% of the drugs coming across," said Phil Jordan, a former Drug Enforcement Administration official who led the El Paso Intelligence Center. Quote, "We don't know the real facts because obviously once the drugs get across, they don't report that they were successful. But the tractor trailers, the human consumption or swallowing of drugs, putting the heroin in dirty diapers and stuff where inspectors don't want to touch, that's always been a way of smuggling through the ports." Bingo. CBP supervisory official and spokesman Phil Barrera said the agency's inspectors are highly trained and effective. But Barrera said they have a myriad responsibilities aside from searching for drugs, sometimes competing for time and attention, and they do not have the staffing or time to pick apart every vehicle crossing the border. Let's take a look at that again. They do not have the staffing or resources to search every vehicle crossing the border. But look, as you can see in this picture, everybody, you know, is impatient. They're out of their car because it's hot. It takes forever to get through these lines. And when they decide to search a car, they're really like investing a lot of their time into that one thing. They're like, damn, if this car is clean, we wasted time. And people that successfully smuggled drugs got through. Article time, quote, "We also process legitimate trade and travel, but on the same token, we also put on another hat and we do enforcement as well." So basically what he's saying is they still have to, every time someone comes up to the desk, they have to ask the same little bit of questions, and then they have to be like, okay, you know, whether they search them or not, they still have to stamp their passport, check their whatever the hell, you know, specific things that they're declaring. I mean, there's a lot of things involved in border crossing that doesn't involve, hey, do you have some, you know, bricks of heroin strapped to your back, or did you stick them in your baby shit diaper over there? Like, quote, "We also combat narcotics. We also process people seeking asylum, and we enforce laws for 40 different agencies here, but as simple as something as an illegal apple or an orange." That's another thing. Illegal drugs aren't the only thing that they have to deal with that crosses the border. They have to worry about everything that's declared. Every day, CBP officers process about 692,000 people entering the country by land, as well as 284,000 non-commercial vehicles, according to the agency's website. Throughout searching, every vehicle would grind the economy to a halt, he said, quote, "And then we'd have our Chamber of Commerce and we'd have our congressmen and everybody giving us a call." Obviously, the economy is crucial, not just to the area, but to the U.S. It's a fine line, but we have to balance it. Barrera said the agency would be able to intercept more drugs if they had more officers and money for scanning technology. CBP's current budget is about $17 billion. The agency has 23,000 employees in its office of field operations and manages the ports. The federal spending bill Trump signed earlier this month averted another government shutdown and included $1 billion funding to boost CBP, including money for the agency to hire 600 more custom officers. The bill also encouraged the agency to hire an additional 600 officers using fees it already collects. Unhappy with the final deal, which included $1.35 billion for fencing, but far less than the $5 billion he had sought for a wall, Trump announced he would declare a national emergency by passing Congress and redirecting additional money approved for other purposes into the border and barrier construction. And for all those states that are suing Trump over this national emergency, thank you. There is absolutely no reason to let the baby man president Trump, who is just being a literal bitch at this point, that just a total fucking loser, that didn't get his way, pouting like a sandy asshole, wearing his diaper that's full of shit, wondering why he didn't get his fucking wall money. I mean, I feel like that's really the petty level that this is all really just at, but technically it isn't. He is just a middle management position. And what's happening right now, whether you understand how the fucking office of the president really works or not, is that the military-industrial complex is coming down hard on his ass. They have the full backing of all the people that put Trump in power. The military-industrial complex, which is Northrop Grumman and Raytheon and all them people. And as far as that goes, that's Wall Street and all the bankers. So basically, that's Trump's crowd. He ain't trying to let them down. And they really want to have billions more dollars going towards that border. That's what they want. They want to have heavy artillery and drones and all kinds of fun shit going on down there. Right now they can't, but they want it. I mean, the only thing holding them back right now is the budget shit. Because between George W. Bush and Barack Obama, they've already made it so we can allow troops to be patrolling shit within our borders, and they got rid of the whole idea that when they do something to somebody, whether it's kidnap you and put you in a cell and try you without anybody even knowing what the crime was, or no defense or nothing, just like a kangaroo court style trial, and lock you away in a black site and torture you without a trial. Or I mean, not without a trial, but that's what they can do. They can do anything, and they don't even got to be considering you a terrorist anymore, thanks to what Trump has signed, since Obama signed the last thing. So the powers of the government right now is way ridiculous as far as what they can do to their own citizens or whatever. And now they want all this funding to go right to our own border. That's all this is. This has nothing to do with the rhetoric Trump's pushing out there. Back to the article. Quote, a big majority of the big drugs, the big drug loads, don't go through ports of entry, Trump said while announcing that he was declaring the national emergency to circumvent Congress for the wall funding. Quote, they can't go through ports of entry. You can't take big loads because you have people. We have some very capable people, the Border Patrol, law enforcement, looking. See, but the problem with that, Trump, is that you are lying right there. You're fucking lying. All right? The big drugs go through that border every minute of the day. There wouldn't be a, like I said, if you were living in Iowa and you smoke crack, or Utah, or just somewhere in the middle of nowhere, like North Dakota, you smoke crack, how is that even there? Well, that's because there's networks that have been established for over 50 years thanks to our prohibition policies. And it's Mexican drug traffic that has spread its fingers to every single place in America. And what it is that, a lot of these people have been here for generations, Mexican Americans. I'm not saying this because I'm not approving of it or I don't like them. I'm saying this because it's a matter of fact that every community in America has people that are of Mexican descent in it now. And if you don't think there's a nice, strong network of shit that comes from Mexico to America, whether it be legal or not, then you're just fucking goofy. Because the drug war, if nothing else, has introduced an opportunity for people to make more money than working at McDonald's for the last 40 years. That's your fault. That's Prohibition's fault, not fucking, you know, people just trying to be sinister. How can you be sinister if drugs weren't prohibited? If there was already taxed and regulated places where you could buy drugs right on the fucking corner, like you could buy cigarettes that kill 500,000 people a year, or alcohol which kills 100,000 people a year, then there wouldn't be this problem. Now would there? I thought we learned that lesson with Al Capone and the alcohol shit, but no, apparently not. Your wall will not do shit compared to legalizing, taxing, and regulating all drugs. You're like, but Brando, you're crazy talking that talk. If you legalize heroin, everybody will do it. First of all, I refer you to Portugal, which, by the way, they did not legalize, tax, and regulate heroin. But they did have options for people that wanted to do heroin in a safe environment and knowing that the heroin that they were doing was not street drug, could be anything, could be fentanyl. All right, I'm going to get back to the article. But federal agencies and even the top Trump administration officials had made it clear that the statement is false that he just said. Talking about them big loads not coming through the border. He's full of shit, the Border Patrol. But the biggest loads come from the fucking C-130s. We just seen a story where some supposedly, okay, these guys were retired Navy SEALs or some shit. Don't quote me on that. They were retired military, and they were taking a jump flight. And I don't know if, when I say they, it might have just been one guy that's guilty of this actual smuggling operation. But apparently he was smuggling like massive amounts of cocaine on these jump flights. And what a jump flight is, it's like if you're a military person or even a veteran, you can take advantage of this thing where when military flights go from one place to another, they'll throw you in there, you know, whether it be a cargo flight or it could be any kind of flight, and they'll work you in. If it's a cargo flight, you know, you literally got to sometimes sit with the cargo or whatever. So, but whatever it was, he figured he could probably smuggle all this cocaine in his duffel bags. Well, he got busted. And when you look at that story, you could think, well, you know, this guy's been smuggling drugs, like he's a retired, so it has nothing to do with the actual military. And you might be right. But what I'm thinking is, when I look at that story, is that he was just still doing, he retired from the military, but he still did what the job that he had been doing while he was in the military. And why do I think that? Because how else would he have these connections? You don't just smuggle like several 100,000 or millions of dollars worth of cocaine unless you have ways to distribute it already in play. And maybe he was just some kind of like a loose end that they wanted to get rid of, so they fucking set him up to take a fall. So whatever the case may be, you would be very naive to think that all the drugs come from the border, come from Mexican cartels, especially heroin, where we know that we, as the United States government and the CIA, has basically been running the heroin and the cocaine for the last 40 years. We got evidence of it. We got testimony on the fucking floor of the Congress. Look it up. It's called the Iran-Contra hearing, in case you're somebody that don't know shit about any of this. You know, there's Cecil Castillo, CIA agent, that will tell you all about it. Or was he a DEA? I think he was a CIA agent. There was another former CIA agent who was a LA, there's just look it up. Look up Freeway Rick. If you don't know who Freeway Ricky Ross is, first of all, it's not that big rapper dude, Rick Ross the rapper. That guy stole the identity of the real Freeway Ricky Ross who was a big crack dealer that got busted in LA back in the day. Look at his story. All right, I'm done talking about that, but we'll finish. I'm going to finish reading this because this is a little important right here. So the 2018 National Drug Threat Assessment produced by the DEA reported heroin trafficking and use on the rise in the U.S. and described how it was crossing the border. Quote, Mexican transcendental criminal organizations, otherwise known as cartels, control the movement of heroin that enters the United States across the southwestern border until it reaches its destination in cities all over the United States. I would have to say that I don't believe that statement, but as a matter of fact, it's true that that is how some heroin gets there. But Mexican drug cartels do not control all of the movement of heroin that enters the United States. But they do control the one, you know, this is why I'm stopping here and breaking this down. It says clearly, in case I read that and you thought, oh, so the DEA is just saying that the Mexican drug cartels is why all the heroin's here. No, they say that they're the responsibility for the movement of the heroin that enters the United States through the southwestern border. That's it. So they're not taking any credit away from themselves or the CIA for the actual heroin coming from Afghanistan. So let's clear that up right away. And now the rest of their statement is the majority of the flow is through privately owned vehicles entering the United States at legal ports of entry. Now that also, I'm going to have to stop right there. That also might not be true. There might be commercial vehicles that have been paid to get through. That's all I'm going to say about that. And then followed by tractor trailers is the second one, is where the heroin is commingled with legal goods. A small percentage of all heroin seized by the Border Patrol along the land border was between ports of entry. And that's important that he included the word land in there, because a lot of the fucking drugs come in through other border areas. So here's Mexico, right? There's ways to go around. You know, I mean, people have been creative for a while. They fly right over the border where there's no one looking. And that's dangerous, but they do enough of it to where a lot of it gets in. And then there's all kinds of other ways to go from here to here. You could even go all the way through like that. I mean, it's not hard, guys. So if you think that this is important, that we seal this up with a wall, you're goofy. You're absolutely irrational, absolutely gullible, and you should be concerned about why Trump is using this rhetoric so hard. That's why I'm making this video. Is to try to point out that this is absolutely a red flag that Trump is saying this about the drugs. Hell, we just heard basically all these reports lately in the last 3 years about how most of the overdose deaths are from fentanyl being laced into everything, or people just taking fentanyl and something else and boom, you're dead. So I don't know what you're even talking about with the drugs that are killing people entering the southern border. That's not even the fucking case, Trump. Let alone that what you're saying is true, that they're going around the fucking ports of entry and just sneaking it in through the desert. Come on, man. You think we're that fucking stupid, Trump? John Kelly, the former White House Chief of Staff, echoed the assessment at the congressional hearing in 2017 when he was a Homeland Security Secretary. Asked about ways to measure border security efforts, Kelly said another metric would be the amount of, and it would mostly comes through the ports of entry, which is another discussion that we can certainly have here, but the amount of drugs come through. Trump, he's on an island. And not only that, but you got to think about it in terms of this. Trump is sitting there listening to advisors telling him different things about what's going on. Literally. He's got advisors telling him, hey, and these are people like John Kelly. He was the chief of staff, all right? And he echoed all the shit that we're saying he said in a fucking hearing in Congress, on the floor, under oath, in front of everybody, didn't get called a liar. He said all the things we're saying right now, man. Are you telling me that John Kelly was just like he just lost his mind and had to like make up a bunch of shit for some kind. What reason would he have to say all that shit? And all the people that advise Trump know this shit. The people that advise Trump on what's going on at the border, you have the Chief of Homeland Security, Border Patrol, ICE, the DEA, the CIA, the FBI, local police all along the border. He could listen to them. Those are the people that know what's actually going on. Or he could listen to the military-industrial complex that he put in power, by the way. All these people that are the generals and the chiefs of staff, those are Trump's guys. And they're telling him, we need a border wall. I don't give a fuck what kind of rhetoric you use to sell it, but get that shit done. And that's the only person he's listening to. So according to Jordan, is why a wall won't significantly affect drug trafficking. Quote, as far as stopping drugs from coming across, it's not going to do it. The fence isn't going to do it, Jordan said. The wall could be a deterrent for a mother who wants to come across and have a baby on this side of the border. It'll be a deterrent for young kids that want to cross, but it's not going to be a deterrent for cartels. You got to ask yourself, why are young kids trying to cross the border? Last time I seen a story about it, I think there was like something like upwards of close to 20,000 kids or 10,000 kids locked up in these fucking detention centers. You got to ask yourself, why would a fucking kid leave Honduras and walk all the way to fucking America to cross the border and seek asylum? Why would that be the case? Oh, you know why? Because of the drug war. That's why. Because of American imperialism that took out their democratically elected government and replaced it with a bunch of fucking right-wing dictators and corporatists. That's what happened all over South and Central America because of the Monroe Doctrine. Look it up. And if you look at Venezuela right now, we're doing the Monroe Doctrine still, and we're doing the same doctrine which we call the Wolfowitz Doctrine, which is the regime change type scenario in Venezuela. So it just continues. And that's all I got on this, man. I'm gonna get out of here before I get any madder about this story. But yeah, if you're some Trump supporter for some reason still, which is just totally absurd, because Trump is a complete fucking idiot. And if, you know, he totally looked at draining the swamp as meaning getting rid of anybody that might still think that the government could work for the people. That's all that meant. And everybody that he put into power in his bureaucracies are all a bunch of fucking corporate, total tyrants that don't give a fuck about your rights. And the only reason he wants this border wall is so that the military-industrial complex can spend billions more dollars than it already does in our border, in the southern border. That's all I got on this. Hit the subscribe button if you want more.